Why won't you let it go, let it go? What we had was never personal, personal. Nothing you could better save your breath, leave your regrets behind. Invincible, you're not invincible.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the inaugural edition of Approach with Caution podcast. I'm your host, Adam Warfel. Beside me, I got Cody.
What's going on, everyone?
And on the couch today, we got Alex, as always.
What's up?
And joining us for our first podcast today, somebody I've been up and down the East Coast with. We've traveled together and done tons of shows. My good buddy, James Brickhouse. How you doing, James?
Woo!
Doing good. So we got a lot to cover today. I mean, we've known each other for 15, 16 years. I mean, it's been quite a while, right?
You're still a kid.
Still feel like it, man. And the longer we go on, you know, the more those memories of wrestling kind of linger in my mind. And it's good to have you on this one because, you know, talking about wrestling with you was something we always got together and did. Pro Wrestling World, on all the travels. So going back to the beginning, where did you fall in love with wrestling?
I was always a fan of wrestling growing up. Many of my memories since I lost my dad at an early age, me and my dad would always sit back and watch wrestling together. I mean, I remember even the debut of Harlem Heat. I remember finding out that when you didn't know British Bulldog, Bret Hart, and Owen Hart, that they were all related. I remember watching that. But yeah, ever since I can remember, I've always been a big fan of pro wrestling.
Yeah, I remember we would talk about Booker T, a little bit of Harlem Heat. That was a little bit before my time, so you were kind of filling me in on that back in the WCW days. So when we were talking about that at Pro Wrestling World, when did you meet Bud Carson?
So I was going, we had like a little get together at a friend's house, and we were going to do stuff like all wrestling related. And I couldn't find anything at any like the main stores that we go to. So they were like, why don't you try Pro Wrestling World at the Merchant Square Mall in Allentown? I'm like, well, where is that? So we Googled it, and actually went with my mom, and that was actually my very first time meeting Bud Carson. Then I remember he did the autograph signing with Tony Atlas and, Rocky Johnson. And right there, that itself is a piece of African American history that you can't deny. So I had to meet them. And just getting there, and while we were waiting for, I believe it was Tony Atlas who was late showing up, I got to talking with Bud. That's actually where I first met Stephen Faust. And from then on, it was like an instant thing where Bud was like, if you're bored, come, check out the shop and everything. And you went there thinking that you were going to actually look for something, but in real life, you went to Pro Wrestling World, and you more or less, it was a family feel, and you created friendships and bonds that you will always remember from that store.
So that was when he had already moved to the Merchant Square, right?
Yes, unfortunately, when he was, I don't know, working by, or the shop was by the Armory or in the Armory, but I remember people telling me about the shop there. I actually wasn't there as when he had first gotten into the Merchant Square Mall.
Yeah, so when I met Bud, man, we're probably right around the year 2000 when I was first getting into wrestling. And he had that shop, 1313 Linden Street, right next to where the Wild Samoans had their training academy.
Yeah.
And they had the ring in the back. Now, I'm not sure if you've seen John Trotsky post that video where they were training Batista. That was actually in the back of the original Pro Wrestling World shop. So, moving forward, you started doing a little bit of security for Bud. Working for LBW?
Actually, the first time I started doing security was with the EPWE Underground.
Okay.
Then after EPWE Underground, I went with Elite Wrestling after Manny Munoz had started up Elite, and he had seen how I worked and was dedicated to EPWE. He's like, well, why don't you come work for me as well? So I started working with him, and then NEWF. When I first started there, I was actually one of their security. That's when we did it up at the bar that Brett Michaels owns here in Pennsylvania. And then after that, when Bud revamped the LBW the final time, that's when I actually did security for him as well, security ring setup. And I was like, with the whole thing with Goosebumps, because Goosebumps used the LBW ring, and Mongoose always taught us that if you're going to be doing this, never forget, like, you're there when a show runs, help them set up, help them put up the ring, help them put up the chairs, guardrails, everything that was included with the show. Make sure you're helping them. And that was part of what they call paying your dues.
See, paying your dues is something that, when I was in the business, was a little bit lost on a lot of the guys. And it comes back to the training schools.
Yes.
Back in the day, you had the Wild Samoans.
Yes.
If you didn't go to them, there was 1 or 2 very reputable training schools.
Yes.
You would learn that. Things changed a little bit more to where people are trained, I don't want to say at home, but through somebody who was trained by somebody who was trained by somebody else. And, you know, a lot of the wrestlers nowadays, they show up as soon as they're in the main event. They don't want to help with chairs. They don't want to help with rings. They don't want to do anything above to get the business better. And I feel that's lost a lot since then.
I remember there was a show that the WWE ran when we were still in Gilbertsville up at Zern's that we had some bad weather, so people decided that they weren't going to be able to make it to Zern's to help Wolfman set up. And Donovan Valley, or Bishop Valley, put out a message out there that Wolfman needed help. As soon as my phone went off and I seen it, I instantly got up, I threw on my socks and shoes, I showed up. I didn't even think about it until I got there, because like I had grabbed my bag, just ran out the door. I walked in, I was still in my pajamas. And I was like, let's get to work. And I helped them put the ring, put the chairs up and everything. And that was actually something that shocked me, because like during my last run, or my last couple of weeks with the WWA, Wolfman always said that time stuck in the back of his head, because I was one of very few who showed up to actually help him.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a thankless job. You know, you get a lot of the wrestlers coming up, they show up 15, 20 minutes before bell time, get their match together, go out, sell some autographs, do the t-shirt gimmick, and they don't think about who put up the chairs, who put up the ring, who sold the tickets, who's trying to help these shows. There's a lot more than just the wrestlers that put on these shows, you know.
I feel like even with bigger companies now, like AEW, like ROH, Impact, you know, even WWE, NXT, even that still goes on. Even though, you know, they've already made it, they could still take the time to show up, you know, do all that stuff.
Actually, it's funny you mention that. Charles Robinson, senior referee of WWE, he is actually on there. He waits for the ring to show up. He helps put it together, and he helps rip it down. Mm-hmm. And to this, like, he's there, like, he doesn't have to, but he's still, it's something he came up with.
Right.
So it's something that, to this day, he still continues to do.
And a lot of respect to that guy, because, I mean, he's been there for a long time, and it goes to show that, hopefully, and sometimes it gets lost on people, but people who put that extra mile in should have stability. I mean, he's out there working on these rings, and these rings are heavy. I mean, the people at home have not put a ring together. I mean, can you elaborate a little bit on what's going on with the ring?
Oh my God, I remember there was some, especially when we did the one in, I think it was the West Side Youth Center in Allentown, when we were on the second floor with the EPWE Underground, and we had to carry those heavy parts of the ring up the stairs, put that ring together, and then have to break it apart and carry everything back down the stairs. Those rings aren't what people think they are. Like, that is pure solid metal. Then you got the wooden beams that go across and everything. Like, that was a lot of weight to be carrying up and down the stairs. And even now, like, even when WWE ran their shows outside, and we had the truck right there, you still paid a price lifting up all that heavy stuff. And then to know that you had to go in the ring, do what you had to do, and then after the show, you had to break it back down and pack it back in the truck. Like, those, wow, that weighed a lot. In all my years of wrestling, I've only seen one man be able to set up and break down a ring by himself in 45 minutes. That was with WXW Coyote Carl.
I haven't, you know, by that time I was a little bit out of it, doing the Triple WA stuff, so I wasn't around for a lot of WXW. I wanted to work Sports Fest. Like, growing up in the mid-2000s, early 2000s there.
Yeah, I remember.
Sports Fest was the show of shows.
Yep.
You know, The Rock did a Sports Fest one year. You look at these guys, Batista did one year. You know, you got Jamal, who was fresh out of WWE. Unfortunately, Sports Fest has kind of fallen off lately.
Yes.
You know, you don't get the big grandiose of Sports Fest anymore. I'm not sure if that was something between WXW and Samu and the person who ran it. But it's definitely a shame that that's fallen off from what it was back when I was growing up. Do you have any memories of early WXW?
So the funny part is you brought up about Sports Fest, and yeah, that's actually my first live event was actually, my first live event was EWF and Hardway Wrestling in Fountain Hill. But then my next one was actually a Sports Fest in Allentown with the Wild Samoans, and I loved that show. And it was something where you knew these guys were from WWE, but you expected okay, maybe they won't talk to me, but no, man, they showed that love for the fans. And then I remember,
that's nice. You want that. You want that experience too.
Yes. And I remember the last WXW show that was at the Sports Fest. I went to watch as a fan, and all of a sudden there's a tap comes on my shoulder. I was like, "What's up?" They're like, "Samu wants you in the locker room." Okay. So I go back in the locker room. I'm like, "What's up?" He goes, "Do you have your gear on you?" And I said, "No." He's like, "We're short a referee. I only have one person here. He's sick as a dog." He says, "Hear a Wild Samoan look you dead in the eye and say, 'I need you.'" I looked back at him and go, "Where's the closest store?" And I went, bought brand new gear, came back, changed around real quick, worked his show. He came up and the main event was coming up. I knew, let's get their senior rep. I was going to go in the back. So we go to switch spots. Samu's coming out for his entrance, grabs me. He's like, "You earned this." He's like, "Outside ring enforcer, let's go." So I'm like, not only am I living my dream, sports festivals, the WrestleMania, the Indies, but they actually have the Samoans be like, "Hey, I need you," and also, "Hey, thank you. Now you earned this spot. Let's do this." And I was like, "Wow!" That was another one that will forever stick in my head.
And coming from a legacy like that, I mean, I was there when Alpha was still running it way back, and then it kind of got taken over by Samu. And towards the end there, I think Lance was doing a little bit with helping out, right?
Yeah.
So something like that. You see the family tradition, everybody talks about The Rock, everybody talks about Roman Reigns, the Usos. There's so many people in that bloodline that are in the wrestling business that still make it go around, because without them, things like WXW up here in PA wouldn't happen. Things like WXW down in Florida wouldn't happen. Guys like Batista would have never got, shown in the main light. Things like that.
You gotta look at people like Batista, you gotta look at people like The Undertaker, with you got Yokozuna, as a matter of fact. Not many people. I mean, I was shocked to find out that he was actually Samoan. I swore he was actually from Japan or whatever. When you found out that he was one of the Anawais, I was like, oh my god. But yeah, so many great people came out of the Samoan camp.
So we're gonna go back. There's a lot of jumping around we're probably gonna do, because there's just so much to talk about. I'm sure we're gonna have you on again at some point. You brought up EWF.
Yes.
And unfortunately, somebody that was a big part of that company passed away. We did that memorial show for Lovebug, Bob Butts, 2 years ago. When I first got around wrestling, there were no other kids in the locker room. It was me and his daughter, Kaylee. We would always hang out together. And kind of growing up, I got close to Lovebug, and he kind of took me under his wing, showed me a lot of stuff. Do you have memories of, Martial Law, Lovebug, any of those guys from back in the day?
There was one... I was seeing somebody a few years ago, and we had to go in. She had to have surgery done. So I'm in the waiting room, and all of a sudden, I'm pacing back and forth because I'm nervous. And the doors open up, and Lovebug comes walking through. And I'm like, you're the last person I expected to see here. He's like, well, I actually work here, but I saw your name on the waiting list, and I had to come make sure you were all right. So he tracked me down in that hospital to make sure that I was alright. He talked with me. He's like, "Don't worry, she's gonna be fine." And to actually sit there and get that type of love and respect from somebody, and then to find out when he had passed, my mom asked him if I knew his mother's name, and unfortunately I didn't. So when I met her at the memorial show, I said, "Hey, are you so and so?" And she said, "Yeah." I'm like, "Did you go to Salisbury High School?" And she goes, "How did you know that?" I'm like, "Do you remember a girl named Jean Kneckle?" And she said, "Yeah." I'm like, "I'm actually Gene's son." So my mom and Lovebug's mom were actually friends in high school.
Oh, that's incredible. There was one time he got me one of my jobs. So when I was down on my luck, he got me working again. And the one time I went and I had some stuff to do, And I was like, I can't stay. I absolutely can't stay. I won't stay. I got stuff to do. I can't, Telling my boss is like, hey, I got to go. The person they sent to relieve me was Love Bug. And that, hey, I can't go turned into him and I talking about wrestling for 3 hours. And zero work was done. And now, unfortunately, he's passed away. And I don't work there anymore, so, if you want your 3 hours of time back, you come get it. But the term brother goes around, everybody says Hulk Hogan, brother, brother, brother.
Yeah.
The wrestling business is so cutthroat.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to reach for the top. There's very, very, very few people, less than I could count on one hand, from my time in the wrestling business that I could consider a brother. One of them is in this room.
Me.
And one of them was Oba. Growing up, he was like his second father to me. So that's something in wrestling that's been lost recently. That, everybody just assumes it's a brotherhood. We're out there to protect each other. But with everything, the addiction problems, with pain and things like that, everybody needs to bring that brotherhood back, that camaraderie, But we're going to get to it, break down a couple more things with James, but we'll be right back after a couple of commercials. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We got James Brickhouse still with us. A couple more things to go over. Cody and I have been wrestling fans for a long time. We kind of know the ins and outs. We have Alex with us.
I'm kind of new into it. Cody kind of got me into it. Well, he got me into it.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. It's so fun.
So with being kind of new, from an outside perspective, I mean, Cody's been around a long time. I've been in the business. James has been in the business. Do you have any questions as far as wrestling or anything like that?
So, like, when... I would say, like, when you get into wrestling and you want to be, like, into WWE, to get to that level, do you have to start out, like, in, like, when the company you're at, or you go right to WWE and, like, apply for it, or how does that kind of work?
So, there are some, like, I've never tried for it because I know I was way too old when I started. But, of course, you got to go to the training centers.
Okay.
Earn what you want, do the seminars when they have them. But the WWE does have tryout matches. They do send scouts out sometimes. You got to listen to the grapevine to find out when the matches are. But then you go there, show what you got. Not be aware, but be ready, because they don't hold back. If they think you suck, they're going to tell you they suck. Mm-hmm. And it's... Like, I don't want to say about being cutthroat. I don't want to say it's cutthroat. They're going straight for the kill.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah, so, like, always, when you get the chance to train, do it. Train. But, as Adam said before about, you got some of these guys now that are going in and they're training in, like, a backyard, or they're training in their house. Don't go to somebody that you know actually has their own school. I mean, right now, Adam said before about back in the day, it was Wild Samoans and then, like, one or two other ones. But now you got the Battlefield, they train people. You got the Dungeon in Reading. Is Trotsky still running the Sanctuary in Hazelton?
I'm not exactly sure what's going on with the Sanctuary. I know they were shut down for the off season. They should probably be getting back into it.
Yeah. But yeah, just look in when you get the chance to train. As a matter of fact, one just started in Whitehall. I'm trying to remember the name. It's two guys that used to be with Chikara.
Oh, Quackenbush, I think, is part of that, right?
Yeah, he's one of them as well. But it's mainly U-Leg and Danny Danger who do the training up there. But they run, I think it's either every Wednesday or every Thursday.
Danny was a good worker, too, back in the day.
Was.
I think he got injured at something, right?
I really have no idea. Once he had left, we had actually lost contact.
So, kind of going back to the Scouts thing, it was hilarious. Back when we were running Zerns, Tony Chimble was, I guess, his kid was friends with Kevin, who was Blitzkrieg, and I'm sure we'll touch on that at some point. And Tony Chimble came to the show. I was backstage getting all my stuff ready, and Molson, who's been around forever, who also kind of saw me grow up around the business, he goes, "Hey, come here, kid," and, he grabs me. I'm like 18 probably. He grabs me and throws me to the curtain. He goes, "Tony Chimble's out there. This could be your shot." And I was like, oh my God, like I panic enough. And that is something that happens. They don't tell you that somebody's coming. Somebody just kind of shows up.
Yep.
And it's like, oh. And lucky for me, that was a couple weeks after I got those trading cards made.
Mhm.
So I can hang my hat on the fact that Tony Chimmel's kid, not Tony Chimmel, has a trading card of yours truly.
Nice.
Any other questions for James, Alex?
So like I said before, you know, getting into it, I know a little bit. I don't know everything. As someone coming into it and, you know, learning, you know, there's a lot of backstories. There's a lot of different things with wrestling. You know, is it, you know, possible like to know what's going on like coming into it, or do you have to look back and like, you know, to know what storylines and different things?
Well, the thing is with storylines is that they can switch up at any moment in time.
Gotcha.
There's
Yes.
no
Yeah,
set
yeah.
pattern. Like, you could think, I mean, heck, me and JT Cage, we ran for 3 years with our storyline. And then there are ones that they'll go in, they'll hype it up, it'll last about a month, and then if the promoter itself feels as though, like, that's not going to progress or anything, they'll cut it on the spot.
Gotcha.
The one thing I always try to do was you got to get that fan interaction going. You got to make them feel like
Yeah.
get that energy pumping, because not only is it pumping through the crowd, it gets you pumping as well. Like, okay, now we got to keep this up. Let's keep this vibe going.
Gotcha. So it's almost just like a continuation, and just like if you're getting into it and you know you're watching it and you keep watching it, you'll start to pick up
Yes.
what's happening, what's going on.
Yes.
And so, like you said, everything changes. So you're constantly knowing, and you're in the loop of everything that's
Yes.
going on. Okay.
And this isn't exclusive to our level, too. I mean, we remember last year when it was supposed to be Rockin' Reigns,
Yeah.
and the fans went nuts. They said, we want Cody, we want Cody, we want Cody, and boom, it was Cody. So, I mean, this is something that, you know, the promoters have the ability. Now it's a little harder to do in WWE where they got bookers and meetings, and they're set up so far in advance. But wrestling is one of the greatest forms of theater because, yes, it's predetermined in where you're going to go, but at any moment you're going to have to change it up. You know, you look at Austin and Brett when they did that double turn back at WrestleMania. Things like that happen, and when you're doing these live, there's no second takes, so things happen and people change on a whim.
Yeah.
You know, so this is something that goes throughout all forms of wrestling. Cody, do you have any questions for James?
So, touching back on you paying your dues,
Mhm.
all the promotions you've done, setting up rings, everything like that. Obviously, still a fan of the sport,
Yes.
WWE, all that stuff. Where personally, I know me and Adam, we're big fans of Logan Paul, just because the in-ring talent he is for just coming into this
Yeah.
is beyond something I've ever seen. Watching since 2001, 2002 maybe. And you just don't see like celebrities or, you know, movie stars or YouTubers even now doing stuff like that. And I also get where Karrion Kross is coming from, whether it was a shoot, whether it was, you know, serious, where there's guys that pay their dues like you, AJ Styles, all those guys that don't get the shots that he does just because he's a bigger name on a wider fan base. So with you being a former wrestler and all that stuff in like indie scenes and everything, where do you lie? Do you respect him as a talent, or do you find it almost disrespectful in a way of how they're booking him?
See, now with Logan Paul, that's a mixed reaction for me.
Mhm.
One, do I respect him as a talent? Yeah, because when he knew what he wanted to do, he put in that time. He put in that effort. He actually
Right.
went out, bought himself a wrestling ring so
Mhm.
that when he wasn't training in the center, when he wasn't training in center, he could actually train at home
Mhm.
and do these moves to perfect and do things that nobody had ever
Right.
seen before. Or so he said. I actually just saw a reel before I came over here.
Was super crazy.
Yeah, where
With that moonsault off the rope.
yeah, I was like, oh my god, like I actually forgot about that. But yeah, it was super crazy. He wasn't supposed to do it.
Regardless of who does it, it's still an impressive thing to pull
Oh, yeah,
off.
and
I
the-
mean, that's a one-time, one shot.
I would
That's
never
what-
be able to.
That's
Absolutely.
what Taker told him. He was like, "That's the one you miss that, you're done."
Yep.
So he had to make sure like he was perfecting it and like to see how he was doing it with the crash pads and everything, like he was safe with it. And that I could respect that because he saw something, he wanted it, he worked on it, he did it,
Mhm.
and it worked out for him because he trained to actually get it done.
Mhm.
Now, as a person, now you gotta understand like what happened over in Japan with Logan Paul. The one thing many people aren't aware with me is that my stepfather was an undertaker, so I grew up around the funeral business, and to see that you could actually find a deceased body and do what Logan Paul did, that's where I lose disrespect or lose respect for him.
Absolutely.
Because you don't sit there, you don't film it, you don't poke it. Call the authorities and get that taken care of.
Indeed. Yeah, for sure. And I think that falls under the separate the art from the artist type thing. I know a lot of people do it with music because there's all this stuff going on.
Controversy of different artists going through stuff.
And there's even, wrestlers back then, stuff like Hogan, Macho Man, all
Flair.
these Flair,
one of the biggest.
all these idols that behind closed doors with the Dark Side of the Ring documentaries and everything, you learn so much. But when you go to WrestleMania, you go to SummerSlam, you go to the fan stores, even the live shows, you still see the love that they have for the character they play.
Yeah.
You don't just see Terry Bollea shirts. You don't see Randy Popo shirts. It's all Macho Man, Hulk Hogan.
And I feel like once you're in that and you go, you're kind of in that mindset. You're like, you separate, like you said, that you separate the person from the character. Like right now, you're in that character mode.
And it's a reverse effect with Dom. I mean, everybody hated Dom. He was such a sleazy scumbag.
Oh my God, what happened at WrestleMania with him was unbelievable. When he won the IC title and that quick, the fans cheered him on. He's trying to go to the back, and I was wondering why he ran back to the ring. Like, I'm curious about this. And then he done an interview. He's like, Triple H stopped me and said, get back there and soak this in. And he ran back to the ring to get his flowers, as what we would say. It
also is the respect aspect too, because I know Adam and I went to PPL Center in Allentown, our local arena.
Yep.
And all the guys drive in, they wave, they do all this stuff. And at the PPL Center, you have to drive all the way down, so you're like, okay, the odds of them coming up. And this is during Face Dom with his dad. Deadbeat dad, by the way.
Total deadbeat.
He was the only one that came up and took the time. There was maybe, 8?
Yeah, they wave.
Yeah, like Liv walked by. She had her suitcase, and she was like hi, and she walked by.
Which I get, they're humans. They have days, but my respect for Dom grew there because he was the only one to come up, take photos, take autographs, and go in. So, regardless of how he is on screen, I'll always have a love for the dude.
Yeah.
I forget which wrestler it was. They said it's tough because when you do, we all know that these, like you said, characters. You got Hulk Hogan, you got Macho Man, Randy Savage. It's one of those things, and they reference that when you go to see a movie, and the movie's over, now he's back to Robert De Niro. Now he's back to Jim Carrey. Now he's Adam Sandler. He's somebody else who he wasn't in the movie. And you look at guys like Undertaker, who 24/7 for years was the Undertaker, when you can't just switch it off. So it's hard to switch off between the artist and the art with wrestling more so than a lot of other things, because you never know.
Jumping Promotions, MJF. Probably the best example.
Yeah.
I mean,
you never know.
I remember back when he changed me heel for a little bit at WWA, when I would attempt to go and do some shopping in Quakertown, fans would see me in there, and right away, like you said, you're not separating the person from the character. And right away, people saw me. They went right into the whole, you're something, blah blah blah, and start giving that heat and everything. It's like, dude, like, I'm not really in the mood for this right now.
Right.
And they keep going on and on and on, and I'm like, I used to get hate messages on Facebook, to the point where I actually had to start blocking some fans where, don't get me wrong. I mean, I remember Paul coming back telling us at 3WA when me and Wyndham had joined up and I became anti-American. And Paul's like, do me a favor. He's like, until you see everybody out of this, he's like, don't you dare leave this building.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, you have so many death threats right now. It's not even funny. He goes, stay here.
And it's tough for somebody like you who is a nice guy, wants to be there for the fans. I've seen countless interactions of you with fans and things like that, and I got tons of stories that we'll tell eventually. But it had to have been tough for you, going from somebody who loved the fans, your fan favorite guy. I mean, you were getting some of the biggest reactions while I was still there, to go and now you can't go to Walmart, you can't go. So, like, I can understand these wrestlers at Walmart, at the airport, wherever they are, and they're just not in the mood. So it's definitely tough to separate that character, you know.
Yeah.
So going back to, we're going to jump back to a couple of things with Pro Wrestling World. We were doing the autograph signings and stuff like that. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the people we brought in. And as soon as we get back from this commercial break, we're going to talk about Pro Wrestling World, the commercial, and some of the autograph signings, what we were doing there.
No.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Approach with Caution podcast. We still got James here in studio with us. How you doing, James?
I'm good.
Good, man. So we're going to go back a little bit to when we were working at Pro Wrestling World. You, me, Stephen Faust did sort of kind of something like this. We talked about pro wrestling. Do you still talk to Steve at all?
Every now and then I will talk with Steve. Steve had a lot going on in his life. I don't want to put personal business out there. But he's doing a lot better. And let me tell you, you hear so much about DDP yoga, and you figure, all right, you know, it's all these athletes are talking about it, so of course they're going to say something nice about it. Steven got into DDP yoga, and you see him now, that dude looks fantastic. To see that it actually works as well as they say it does.
That's what you were showing me.
DDP yoga is no joke. I did the one Stevie Richards like free 15-minute beginner workout, and I was in the worst sweating sauna, tight chest feeling thing ever. And I'm like, I really think I should look into this.
Yeah. DDP yoga and DDP, for who he is, now he doesn't get a lot of credit in the business for what he did. A lot of big stuff with the NWO when he came to WWF, which I was always a WWF guy. Didn't really get his flowers, and still doesn't, but the things he's done for guys like Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, Jake the Snake Roberts, and so many others,
Yes.
like that guy has put so many other people in front of him. And, you know, we got to take a minute to thank him because he prolonged Scott Hall's life, man. I don't know how many years. 'Cause
Yeah.
Scott was in such a bad spot before DDP got to him. Same thing with Jake the Snake, man. These guys, we were about to lose two legends if it wasn't for DDP. But going back, we had Scott Hall there. We had Jake the Snake there. There were a couple of people that we did those autograph signings with at Pro Wrestling World. Is there anybody that sticks out in your memory from the ones that you worked that, you know, were a super cool guy, you know, a bad guy, somebody who didn't enjoy the fans or something like that? Any stories on that?
I remember Ken Shamrock. He was one that he showed that he wasn't just there to sign autographs. He was there for the fans. Him, Dan Severn, they all shared the stories of what it was like in the wrestling business and how Dan always called himself the original Beast. I forgot they used to call him the Beast, Dan Severn.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I was like, oh yeah, you're alright. But Road Warrior Animal, he was great to sit, talk with. I always wondered about the shoulder pads, and he was like, oh no, it's done like this. And showed me how he would unscrew and screw in spikes in the shoulder pads. He's like, yeah, believe me, it's great trying to get through a TSA with this in your bag.
Oh, I could imagine.
Gangrel, he was like down to earth, funny, loved talking to that dude. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, him and Tugboat, they were characters. Loved, like, you can help but laugh while they were there. The only one I could recall that we had a bad interaction with was Bob Backlund. Because it was Bob Backlund that was like, well, if you want my autograph, you have to buy one of my books. That wasn't in the contract that Bud had drawn up with him to bring him in. And actually sit back and try to change at the last minute. Like, I really thought that was... are we allowed to curse on your show?
Yeah.
That was a real asshole thing to do.
Yeah.
Right, we are unscripted, uncensored, unplanned, all that. So
Just
you can say
approach with caution.
Yeah, you can say
there you
whatever the fuck you want to say.
But that Bud went out. He took care of that right away, and you know, Bud would never once can you say that Bud wasn't there for the fans because he showed that he always cared. And even when we bring about Scott Hall, he knew that him and Sims were late, and he wanted to stay and honor the deal that he had with Bud, and continue signing everybody's autographs that were there. It was Sims who lifted Hall about a chair and pushed him out the side door to get him out of there. Like, Hall had such a thing for the fans, and the fact that he got his second chance at life, he wanted to pay it forward so bad. And then when he came back with the NWO, still one of the greatest dudes ever to sit back, be able to talk with, get to know. And, but yeah, there were a lot of great people there. Brodus Clay, I remember a lot of people ask, why wasn't he like smiling in the photos, what was going on with him, and he was real quiet. Then you later learn about 2 weeks after that he was at Pro Wrestling World. While he was at Pro Wrestling World, he was actually going through a divorce. So he was still trying to live up to his contract, but he was also going through something rough in life as well.
I actually didn't know about that. I was there for that signing, and he was not super friendly. I remember that. And when he would sign, I'm a big fan of like nice signatures, give the fans, he was just released a little bit before that, and it was an astronomical amount of money. I mean, we're talking, I know what Bud paid for some of these guys because I was there in some of the meetings.
Yeah.
Brodus Clay, because he was fresh off TV, got a lot of money.
Yeah.
So at that point, Bud and I were pretty annoyed because it's like, well, he got more than, and I can say this, more than Scott Hall. He got more than Kevin Nash did from us. He got more than Hacksaw Jim Duggan for us. This is Brodus Clay.
Yeah.
And we were dumbfounded because the fans were coming in and mad at us because he's on his phone. He doesn't want to talk to nobody. He's this and that. And I had no idea that happened. So, like, that's something I'm just learning now. So, I mean, that's something we could look back on, that we could have had addressed. We've had a couple of cancellations that came up at Pro Wrestling World, but a lot of the times things were great. And going back to the NWO thing, we had X-Pac, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. That was the biggest signing that Pro Wrestling World ever did. Do you remember who the second biggest signing was?
I want to say it was Brett.
Okay, that was a little bit after I was gone. I'm sure Brett had a huge line, but during my time, AJ Styles was the biggest line that we had, to the point where AJ was done with his 2-hour signing, and Bud doubled his rate because we still had another 2 hours after that.
Yeah.
That line for AJ Styles, now I think this was after the TNA run.
When he was going over to New Japan.
Somewhere around New Japan. So that was huge. And seeing that wrestlers, it's good to know that the fans care about wrestlers who aren't just WWE guys.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows that's the pinnacle. That's, no matter what anybody says, that's where you want to be. You want to aspire to be a WWE guy someday. If it's for one match, 1 year, 1 decade, you want to get there for something. But seeing AJ Styles come in and get the reception from the fans that he got was mind-blowing to me. And he's such a nice guy. He was there and willing to stay. Because he could have said, no, I'm going to hop on a plane, I'm going to get back to Georgia or Florida or Japan or wherever he's going.
Yeah.
He was willing to stay, and he actually approached Bud about staying longer, too. And it worked out great. So, I mean, doing the stuff for Pro Wrestling World, you get to see all the ins and outs of the business. And I can't count how many conversations we had there about wrestling. So that goes into the museum.
Yeah.
Do you remember the museum that we had there? Was there something in the museum that you kind of resonated with?
Well, I always loved looking in the case. I think it was the World Heavyweight Championship from WCW. I believe it had Bret Hart's nameplate on it.
Mm-hmm.
That was something I always loved because that was always one of my favorite titles, besides the regular Winged Eagle that they had. Seeing even some of these wrestlers that they took their actual ring tights, their ring-worn tights, autographed them, and handed them to Bud and said, here, put this up on your wall.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember which one it was that...
Eric Young did that. I was there. He gave Bud a pair of his trunks. He goes, here, this is for the TNA section. So a lot of the wrestlers, when they see... A lot of the wrestlers, if you ask them for something, they just assume, like, oh, it's going to be on eBay on Tuesday.
Yeah.
But when they came to Pro Wrestling World and they saw what we were doing, they were more likely to not just give us something, but donate something. We had, when Eric Young won the TNA World title, we had his trunks and knee pads in our TNA section. I believe until the place closed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was such a cool place to be, and I don't think there's ever going to be something like it. I know up in New York they got the wrestling figure store, and they got
But the thing is, you can have that type of stuff, and you're a store,
mm-hmm.
you're a store, you're a business. But when he had his store, it wasn't just about being a store. he wanted to form that bond, that friendship, and everything. And to me, I'm like, at first, it kind of seemed like, okay, are we doing this so that we can now bring our friends in? Like my friends brought me there, but it wasn't that. And I remember a little story not many people know, but my mom had gone through a cancer scare. And I remember going up to Pro Wrestling World, and I told Bud about it. And Bud's like, well, I think it's time that we pray for your mom. And I'm thinking, you're going to go home and, you're going to say a prayer while you're there, like a lot of people say they're going to do. Bud done it right there in the middle of the store.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't matter if there were customers coming in or not, he wanted to get that prayer out there for my mom. And that is something that I will always respect the hell out of him for. And luckily, like I said, it was a cancer scare. It did come back benign. But, yeah, that will always stick in the back of my head with Bud.
Yeah, the amount of stuff I learned from Bud as far as marketing, as far as sales, as far as wrestling. I mean, my knowledge of wrestling goes back to the 70s and 80s, long before the 90s and 2000s when I was watching it. And I can accredit almost all of that to Bud Carson. I wouldn't know the wrestling business, the ins and outs, and I wouldn't have had a lot of the opportunities that I had in the wrestling business if it wasn't for Bud. So, I hate how things ended there, and I'm sure it'll come up eventually. But Pro Wrestling World was my home. I love that place, and I have fond memories. I mean, I met so many incredible people through Pro Wrestling World. And you and I became good friends there, and we started doing a lot of road trips together. From Triple WA, we went to the Sanctuary together. There were so many
EGW, EHW.
Great. Most of those were great shows. We've had a couple of mishaps, though. EGW, that show.
Yep.
You want to enlighten us to one of your biggest fears?
Oh my God! All right, so we're sitting in the locker room, and this guy walks in. and They call him Snake Man, and I have no idea. Like maybe it's just a nickname to this guy or whatever. And he puts his big tote down, and I'm thinking nothing of it. And all of a sudden, he pulls the tote lid up. And as soon as he does, this big snake head pops up out this tote and just looks. I got up, grabbed my stuff, ran out the locker room.
I would have done the same.
They asked me, like, they kept saying, like, hey, we're going to go over the match. Do you want to come inside so you know what it is? I was like, you either come out here or you're going to talk to me about it in Gorilla. So as long as that big thing is sitting there, I won't be there.
Oh my gosh.
That was something I never experienced. They say don't work with kids, don't work with animals. Snakes, not my favorite thing to deal with. A lot of the people in the locker room
that
were uncomfortable.
head was bigger than my fist. Like, this was not a small snake.
It was a big snake. Yeah, I definitely remember that. I mean, and then we had some issues with audio. We had some issues with the owners. There was some stuff that happened with one of the female workers there that was really unfortunate.
See, that's what I understand with that show, and I gotta say it like this. All right, so where we were getting dressed for that show, it was actually part of what they would do for church because it was at a Salvation Army, I think that's what they're called.
Yeah.
And so it was like when people come in to do church in the mornings and whatnot, it's in that area, okay? So they didn't allow this girl to dress in the locker room with us. They felt as though it was inappropriate. But I'm like, okay, so you run a church, you preach about everything, you have a snake by a cathedral. Like, which part are we not understanding here?
Something's not adding up.
It was definitely unfortunate, and I think she was definitely upset at that. She went, changed in the women's room, but it's like, all right, she's part of the business.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stories of inappropriate conduct in locker rooms. That one, I don't think there was any. I wasn't aware of any. She could have got changed with us. It's something that a lot of the boys, we get changed. We worry about ourselves.
The thing was, they didn't even want her in the locker room with us at all, period. Not even to sit there and talk.
Yeah.
Also on that show, as we're setting up, we're getting things ready, and there was a fight between either the booker or the owner.
That wasn't the same show. That was two different shows. Because I said, with the snake, if you want to talk to me, we got to be in the gorilla because I wasn't going back in the locker room.
Was that a different?
It was the one after that.
Okay, so I went back up for that, and there was a fight between the audio guy and the promoter or the booker. I'm not sure who it was. And the audio guy starts ripping down the entrance.
ripped down the entrance, ripped down the sound equipment, packed up his computer, and left.
And guess what happened?
Adam, who was the ring announcer at the show, actually had to do his ring announcing on a karaoke machine.
Wow.
And this is something they had to wheel back and forth and put in the ring, bring it out of the ring. So he's doing this for every match. I kind of felt sorry for the guy.
Are there photos
There are a couple of photos, and you could tell
with the karaoke machine?
Yes.
Oh, perfect.
I have them on my Facebook on my ring
Incredible.
announcing, so make sure you check that. I was carrying this damn thing. It wasn't light. It was a church gospel karaoke machine. This thing was heavy duty business purpose. I mean, and I'm carrying this thing. I'm lugging it between back and forth, putting it in the ring. I had a friend who came to watch me perform at this show. I apologized profusely to them, and I was like, this is not indicative of what I do. This show, I was so mad and so frustrated at everything that happened at that show. I didn't get paid. And James here, he was like a big brother to me that whole run I was doing in wrestling. He went back in and got money for me, and I was just happy to be out of there. And it was another one of those, I was ready to leave, and James went in there and fought for me, so I appreciate that. But
now, we're talking about the negatives with that show. There was one positive. Somebody had just came out of training. And when he showed up, he thought that he was going to be a referee. That not knowing they actually wanted him to wrestle. This dude had no type of gear on him whatsoever for wrestling. And he was like, what do I do? All of us, I gave him my knee pads. Another guy gave him a pair of tights. And those guys said, here, why don't you use these boots? We all came together to make sure that this dude was able to actually go out there and perform his very first wrestling match. And to me, I felt like that was that brotherhood, where we all came together to help this young man out.
That's what the business is about, man. And we got a couple more road stories before we hang on, before we get off of here. But we're going to take a commercial break. We'll be back shortly with one of the greatest stories from my wrestling career. We're going to talk to James, the man who inspired this story, who I still tell to this day, 10 years later. We'll be back with some more right after this. All right, guys, welcome back. Thanks for sticking around. We got James Brickhouse still with us. We're going to talk a little bit about road stories. James, do you have any fun road stories that I wasn't there for? I know you were still in the business a little after I was left.
That you weren't.
That I wasn't there for. So when I had my retirement at the ripe age of 22 from the business, did you have any good stories after I left?
Any story, like, when we're going up and down the road, like, I traveled a lot with Roadblock. And me and him, we'd always talk about, like, how can we better ourselves? And what could be better about the parts that we were running in, or the storylines that we were running in. What can we do to help hype up with the fans and everything like that? I remember once traveling, I think we were up in New York. It was me, Mongoose, and Autumn Breeze. And I fell asleep in the car. Now, mind you, I had worked late the night before, had to be up early, so we'd go to the show the next day.
There's cardinal sin number 1. Never fall asleep in the car, in the hotel, around the boys. Don't be the first one to fall asleep. They will fuck with you.
Oh, God, did they ever... Like, I'm so... Mongoose was like, how can you sleep with your head like that? Your mouth's wide open, you're snoring up a storm. And I'm like, dude, I was tired. Like, I was working on Coca-Cola at the time. And I guess it was peak season, but we were pushing out the power rate as fast as we can. But we were pulling like 12-hour shifts. And to wake up, to go home late, and then have to wake up early to go on the road. Like, I just sit in the back seat, nothing to do. I'm just going to, fall asleep. And yet, like you said, Carlton, don't ever do it. But that was always funny to sit back and do that. Trying to think of other...
One of the best road stories I have. We were doing a wrestling show down at Triple WA down in Q-Mart. It was one of the early shows, the Outside Show.
Oh.
And I knew better because I know wrestlers. As much as I love you guys, I respect you guys. Some of you guys are idiots. Some, not all, but some. I knew to park out back of the arena, far from the ring. You don't get near the ring. Don't leave your stuff around the ring. Nothing. Molson, been around the business, a veteran, probably 30 years deep, parks by the entranceway. Were you there for this show?
Yeah, that's when I actually reffed that match. I know what you're talking about.
So, they're coming up to a spot, and Molson and O-Dog at that point, they go for a body slam. And he goes, oh, I'm going to body slam you on my car. He picks him up, body slam, boom. O-Dog's boot through the windshield of the car. He turns around and goes, oh, shit. I said, bro, it was your car. Why would you body slam somebody on the hood of your car? And most importantly, why would you park there? So, like, he broke his windshield.
See, I think the
crazy.
reason why he parked there, actually, if I remember right, it was with setup. We were having trouble. It was a little windy that day, and the one pole kept moving. So Molson actually backed the car up to actually be able to set the pole that it was level with the car, so it stopped moving. And we were able to keep the curtain going completely around.
And a noble feat that cost him probably $300 for a new windshield. So yeah, I mean, there's so many stories about the wrestling business, and we're gonna have to get a bunch of us together and just talk road stories. But one of the best things that ever happened to me, and this was something I still bring up, and I don't think a lot of people know that weren't there. Triple WA was big on doing autograph signings, meeting the fans, getting people to the arena. I'm in the locker room, I'm getting ready, and I walk up to James, he's getting ready. He's in the locker room, I said, hey, are you going to do the signing today? And he goes, nah, probably not going to go do the signing. I said, come on, we got to go. And I'm talking him into this.
Peer pressure.
I peer pressured the shit out of this poor guy. He wanted nothing to do with it, and he's like, I got to get ready. And at this point, it was still early-ish in your Triple WA run. So, like, you weren't an established official. You weren't, like, the guy yet. And I bring him up to this autograph signing, and I'm a jokester. I'm pranking. I'm having fun. And
we left the part out.
Okay.
But, go ahead. Once I tell my version of this, I'll put
your
that part
version?
in. Yeah.
I'm sure it's vastly different, because this played out so much better in my mind than I'm sure it does in his. And I'm up there, and I'm throwing bumper stickers at people, and I'm yelling, you need a bumper sticker, you need a bumper sticker, come to the show tonight, come to the show, take a bumper sticker. And by this point, James is fucking hyped. He's ready to go, he's excited for the show, and he pops up behind me, he goes, ma'am, you look like you need a bumper sticker, and he throws this bumper sticker at a blind woman. She obviously didn't need a bumper sticker, but I was so glad he was there, because that made my whole day. And that show went incredible for me. To this day, I don't let him live it down.
No. See, you're telling a different way. This is what really happened.
Okay.
Yeah, you did pressure me to go out there. And Dino had actually come up and said, why don't you guys go out there and pass out the bumper stickers? So that was the thing. And, of course, you were the ring announcer at the time. So you were used to talking with the fans. I was just that referee still at the time. And so we go out there, and he's right. Like, I was hyped. I was getting into it. I'm happy and everything. And I was like, you know what, ma'am? It looks like you can use a bumper sticker, too. And the lady's looking at me. Now, mind you, big-eyed, got glasses on. I'm thinking nothing of it. Homegirl reaches behind her and pulls out and starts unfolding a blind walking stick. I hated the bumper stickers at him, and I said, I'll see you later. And I went back to the locker room.
I found James 45 minutes later in the corner of the locker room. I was like, are you okay? He goes,
bigger question, do you think she still has the sticker?
I don't know if she ever took it. Well, you gotta think about it, though. She's blind. Did she know where we put it?
Yeah.
She definitely lost it as soon as she left.
Yeah.
I know one thing for a fact.
She dropped it, and she's like, oh, crap. I don't even know where.
One thing for a fact, it never made it to her bumper. But we're going to wrap up tonight, guys. I want to thank James for stopping by. Woo! James, a round of applause.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Alex, for pitching in. And Cody for getting this thing started.
Do you mind real quick if I give a couple shout-outs?
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Let us know.
First off,
absolutely.
I made mention before that I started seeing somebody. So, Leah, how you doing, hon? I gotta say thank you to Johnny Padilla. He's one who gave me my start in APWE. Manny Muniz with Elite Wrestling. Sonia Dino Sana. Ray Torres, Molson. Like, a lot of you guys were there for me. Chad, Roblox, Autumn Breeze, Mongoose, JT Cage, Hat Guy. Thank you guys for everything.
Yeah, man. So it was great having you on today, James. I appreciate you stopping by. There's so much more we need to talk about that we can't get through 15 years in just an hour, so I'm sure we'll be having you back on, telling a lot more great stories.
Anytime you got an open spot, I'm definitely down for another show.
And we're going to get this wrapped up, and we're going to get this out next Friday. And we'll definitely have you back on. So stay tuned for next week. We'll have another guest on. Thank you for tuning in.